Hello. If you can let me know you can hear me and see me and everything is running as it should be, that'd be great. Don't know what's happened to the chat room here. Hold on. What on earth? Hello. Don't know what's happened to the chat room here. Hold on 1 second. Oh, the chat room's there. Okay, so if someone can let me know, they can see me, they can hear me. Okay, that's good. I don't know why the format has changed on my screen today. I'm not sure why that's happened. If you can let me know you can hear Ableton as well, that would be great. So if you could let me know you could just hear Ableton. Ah, brilliant. Okay, so today I'm gonna start looking at a little bit of sound design. So first thing that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start using analog to create a drum kit, bass line, and some synth patches, and maybe let's look at some sampling as well today. Also, it's a good chance for you guys to discuss your assignments because they're due in this Friday. So anyone that's watching, got any questions about that, you can ask me at the end in the last 30 minutes. So I'm going to start to design a drum kit in analog, and we're going to look at analog because analog uses subtractive synthesis, which is one of the it's one of the oldest forms of synthesis that we use, but it's also one of the most important forms. Any analog synth you see uses subtractive synthesis, and the techniques that we use in subtractive synthesis have been employed in samplers and lots of other places. So if you can get your head around the concepts of subtractive synthesis, you can do a lot of cool stuff with sound design, basically. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to think about opening up an analog, which I've already done here. And I'm going to design a kick drum here. So first oscillator, I'm just going to have just one oscillator on, so I'm going to switch that oscillator off there. I'm just going to have a sine wave here, and I'm going to try and find the right pitch for a kick drum. Sine wave is a good kick drum sound. Let's go a bit lower. Okay, so that's quite nice. So I'm going to draw that in on every beat. It's the 4/4 kick drum. So we have, okay, so you can hear that that's already a good building block for a kick drum. Next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to change the pitch envelope on the kick drum, because if you think about a kick drum, when you hit a kick drum, it starts faster and then it goes slower. So changing the pitch envelope will emulate that kind of effect. So very extreme there. You can hear we're adding a bit of attack to it, like that. Nice analog sounding, and we can mess around with that till we get something we like. So I'm going to go for something quite sharp. So quite a thumpy kick drum. Okay, so now we've done that, I'm going to look at the amp envelope. It's quite boomy at the moment, so I'm just going to bring that back a bit there. That's kind of kick drummy, I quite like that. Obviously, we could have a click of a kick drum and then have another sound underneath, but I'm just going to use one oscillator. Or we could do a full envelope like this, so bring the sustain down and then the release. That's kind of quite a classic analog kick drum there. Bring that back. Let's look at this pitch again. That's nice. Still a bit boomy, so let's bring this down a bit. Okay, that's a kick drum. Okay, so I'm happy with that. And then we could actually add another note in an octave lower as well. So we've just got that sub, or maybe we could just change the pitch. So that's a kind of thumpy analog kick drum. And obviously we would use other processing to really bring that out and make that sound better. Maybe a saturator or something. Saturator, where are you? Okay, already sounding fatter. Turn that drive up. Make sure that attack is on 0. Okay, and I've always found you get that kind of flammy effect when you're using analog to design a kick drum. That's just the way it sounds. Okay, so now I'm going to go for a snare. So I'm going to grab another analog, and this time I'm just going to use the noise oscillator. One oscillator again to create a simple snare. So I'll select the noise oscillator there. And then, it doesn't matter what note I put in, because it's going to sound the same, whatever note I put in. So I'm just going to go like that. And we have, and once again on the amp I can just use most analog synths only have a decay on their settings. I mean, analog drum machines only have a decay on their settings anyway. So you have the sustain at 0 and the release. Maybe we turn the release off actually, and then just okay. So that's kind of nice snarey sound already. But I'm going to use the filter. Maybe a bandpass filter and a little bit of resonance here. Okay, that sounds a little bit like a side stick then. And then we have so you get a nice artificial snare. I could use another filter setting to change the effect. I swear I get weird timing issues with the analog kick drum. Always had that. So what else could I do here? I could change the filter envelope as well. If I wanted to get a slightly different effect on the filter. Maybe change the filter to a so I can just mess around and get nice artificial snare sound there. Weird that flamming effect I get on the kick drum. I've always noticed that. It does sound like an analog drum machine. It's so out. Right, so now I'm going to do a similar thing with the hi-hats, but I'm just going to use the snare setting, exactly the same as a snare here, but I'm going to use a high-pass filter here. And I could have a nice closed hi-hat there, or a open hi-hat. Mess around with the envelope, so just mess around with them until they sound. That flamming's really annoying me here. I'm going to look at this. I'm going to freeze this channel and sort this out actually. See what's going on with it. Create audio track, and could maybe resample the kick drum actually and trigger it from there. Let's have a look at this kick drum. We'll copy this out into here and see why we're getting that flamming effect happening here. Seems to be like a delay in it starting there, but it's weird because the envelope all seems good. So look, let me create a simpler here, just a MIDI track here, and let's drop that into there like that, and let's grab this and reprogram this into MIDI again like this. See if we can tighten this up. So it's that kind of thump at the beginning which was letting us down. Okay, so we resampled that kick drum. Always something that's good fun when you're dealing with analog stuff. Okay, so we've got snare. Next I'm gonna, let me undo deleting those tracks actually, and let me just have a look at making some kind of tom with this snare. So we've sampled that, resampled that kick drum, and now we've resampled it, we can have some fun with it. We could change the pitch of it here, for example. I mean, we could do that by drawing on the keyboard as well, so we could pitch it down a little bit. But I'm actually pretty happy with that kick drum now that I've chopped the beginning part of it off. Okay, so I'm just going to unfreeze this. I'm going to grab this now, and we sampled it with that on anyway, I think, or perhaps we didn't. I'm going to add that to my kick drum now. See, nice analog, fat, homemade kick drum there. happy with that. So I'm now going to use what we had for the kick drums to design some higher pitched percussion. If I go higher on the keyboard, then we're going to change that sound. Okay, so we've got some percussion then. That's a nice percussion sound. Turn that down. So we're creating our own kit. Okay, so it's sounding nice and analog. So we've done that. Now I'm going to come out of a bass patch. So I want something a bit. I'll come out of a classic acid bass patch now. So I'm going to create a new MIDI track here, and I'm just going to grab another analog, and once again, single oscillator for this sound. Square wave bass is always good. So I'm going to grab the square there, and then let's make a bassliney sounding thing. Where is our kick tuned to actually? Okay, so maybe we can tune the bass so it's okay. First thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to change the app of the app. Change the amp there. Then nice loads of resonance. Oh, that's really screaming now. That's like a classic 303 sound. And then we start changing the envelope on the filter. We can get different kinds of sounds. And now I'm going to turn it into a mono synth. So a mono synth will only play one note at a time, and this is really useful for your glide settings. So I'm going to go into my global shell here, and I'm going to go into my unison. Number of voices is, where are you voices? Yes, unison voice, that wrong thing. So voices here. So I'm going to turn it into mono there. So now that's a mono synth. I'm going to turn glide on and then glide mode constant, and then I can turn the glide up a bit. So when I put an extra note in there now, it's going to glide between those two notes. So if I, for example, brought that note across. So let's undo that. Let's add an extra note actually. That's giving us a classic acid glide then. I'm changing the settings here. Let me just bring down the velocity of this note here. And we have some classic kind of early 90s acid there. So okay, so that's all a lot of fun. So let's now okay, so yeah, okay, so Ableton is quite quiet compared to the volume of my voice. Okay, so that we need to do that really. So you can hear me. If I turn Ableton up too loud, it's going to start overpowering my voice quite a lot, which is not ideal. So I can maybe turn it up a little bit at the end. But if you look at my voice volume compared to Ableton here, that's what I'm sending. So obviously my voice is up there. If I turn Ableton up too loud, we're going to start getting you won't be able to hear me, basically. And this is quite loud anyway, so we're clipping there. I mean, actually, when I look at Ableton on here, it's turned up full, so I could turn down my voice a little bit. Is that better? Could you hear both clearly still when I do that? Okay, so next up, I'm going to go and I'm going to look at creating a pad in analog. Well, actually, yeah, let's do that. Let me create a MIDI channel. So I'm going to just put one long note in here. So that's got two oscillators, so I'm going to have two different oscillator types. I'm going to have a sawtooth and a square wave. You can already hear that starting to thicken up a bit. Now I'm going to start using filter envelope to make this a bit of a sweeper. So both these sounds are going through the same filter here. And then I really want this to sustain for as long as I need it to. Turn the frequency down a bit on that. Right, now to add a little bit of movement to the pad, I'm going to use the LFO on the filter 1. I'm going to turn that down like this, and I'm just going to put that onto my filter 1 here, and I'm going to put it on the frequency modulation there. So and that's a lot of LFO I've put on there, so I only want a tiny little bit. So Just going to add a little bit of movement. And now I'm going to use some unison to detune these. Add a little bit of vibrato as well. And then also a little bit of delay and stuff as well. Good for freaky sounds. Then I could have both of the oscillators going through different filters if I wanted as well. So I could turn that to filter 2, turn my filter 2 on there, turn my amp 2 on there, and have different settings on here. So now when I play it, we're getting a real movement between these two oscillators. And also I could put second LFO on if I wanted as well, and have different speed of the LFO here, moving the filter in a different way here on my second. So with a little bit of time, we can start building up quite a complex kind of patch. Okay, so we've only got a couple of minutes left, so I just want to show that actually you have all these kind of settings in simpler as well. So let me just grab a vocal sample. That's quite nice and acid housey, so let's get rid of that actually. Edit, undo, drop kits. Edit, undo. So now we've got this in simpler. Just going to edit this out a bit. And I'm going to start messing with the envelope in here. Go into my control here, and I could, for example, put the LFO onto the pitch here. Onto the filter here. Let's start doing some sound design inside So we've got very much similar options as we do in analog to shape the sound. We've got our LFO, our envelopes, our filter, so we can start to play around with that and start getting some really unique sounds. And obviously we can automate all this as well. So that is a quick guide to subtractive synthesis and using the same kind of techniques as you would use in subtractive synthesis inside Simpler. It's over to you now, guys. Right, so subtractive synthesis is, like I said, one of the oldest forms of synthesis. It's also one of the easiest to understand. You know, FM synthesis is very difficult to understand. You're talking about, so basically, if you think about an LFO on pitch, right, when I start to speed that up very, very fast, you start to get something that sounds like FM synthesis. And now what you're doing with FM synthesis, you're using one waveform to modulate another waveform. An LFO is actually a waveform that is, or an oscillator, which is below the frequency we can hear at. So if I put this, where are we with this pad, for example, if I start to put this LFO on extreme things on the pitch here, so let me put the LFO on there. Let me turn that oscillator. Right, once I start speeding that LFO very, very fast, you start to get that effect, right? So it's not really, when you get it up really, really fast, it's not really, really changing the pitch anymore. It starts to add other harmonics and inharmonics to the waveform. So once that goes, at the moment that's 17 Hertz. Once that goes higher than 20 Hertz and up to like the level of hearing, it no longer creates a change in the pitch that you can hear. It just, the original pitch stays there, but you can hear more harmonics and inharmonics above it and below it. Or mainly above it, actually. So what you're doing with FM synthesis, you're using that to create sound. So you're modulating the pitch of one waveform with another waveform. And then you've got in FM synthesis, an oscillator is normally called an operator. So you've got up to 5 of these oscillators that can modulate each other or play it at the same time as each other. So you've got additive synthesis mixed with kind of FM synthesis, and you have different algorithms so they can go in different orders. So it's a lot more complicated, and it's a lot harder to master. In fact, the Yamaha famous DX7, the Yamaha keyboard, said that 90% of the models which were sent back to repair, no one had even bothered to change the patches. They just used the presets. So FM synthesis, the theory is quite easy to grasp, but actually designing sounds on it can be very, very difficult. So it's a lot of trial and error. And you know, anyone that says, "Oh, I really know FM synthesis," challenge them to do something with it. And when you see what they can do with it, you'll know how well they actually know it. So, like, knowing the theory is easy. Putting that into practice and doing sound design with FM synthesis is a lot more difficult. Also, the sound of I much prefer the sound of analog synthesizers. I mean, I bought an FM synth for my live show recently, and I just didn't sound right with my sound. Think of analog as a lot more kind of warm, organic even, you know, a kind of very much old school kind of house and techno kind of sound. FM synthesis can be quite icy, can be quite brittle sounding, but you can also, you know, I would say, arguably, FM synthesis is a lot more powerful for sound design, although neither FM or analog are particularly good at making realistic sounds. They're better at making sounds that either sound like FM synthesis or analog synthesis. So hopefully that clarifies it a little bit for you. Yeah, I mean, subtractive is a good one to learn. And like I said, once you get your head around subtractive synthesis, you can do a lot of sound design because it's used in in samplers. It's used in loads of other places because it's one of the first, and people borrowed, you know, subtractive techniques from the early synthesizers in all different kinds of, you know, in all different kinds of sound design ever since. Even the FM synths borrow things from subtractive synthesis. You know, they've got the envelope and the filter, and a lot of them have got the same kind of ideas. And you know, wavetable synths, samplers, all use the same basic thing as subtractive synthesis. The difference as analog synths, the difference is in an analog synth, the original subtractive synthesis, you had a variety of waveforms like you have here. So you have, you know, and waveforms which were generated with analog oscillators. So you have a sine wave, sawtooth, square, pulse width, noise waveform. Whereas when you're doing sampling, or you know, FM synthesis or wavetable, you've got a lot more kind of options that you have at the beginning of the subtractive synthesis techniques, if that makes sense. Okay, so you wanted to know what the difference of the glide modes are. So the glide mode is constant all the time. So where are we? So glide mode is either constant all the time, and that's regardless of the interval between the notes. Otherwise, the glide will be proportional to the difference of time between the notes. So that's if you're using different notes. It will glide between the different notes. What I was using it for is as a monosynth. If you have two notes together playing at the same time, it cuts the attack and the beginning portion off the first note, and the pitch of that first note glides quickly between two notes, and that gives you that kind of classic acid sound, which is used to, and not just acid, it's used a lot in modern dance music as well. So you're turning the synth to a mono synth before you're putting the glide on, and you're actually you haven't got any interval between the notes at all. You're playing two notes which overlap to create that sound. Well, I'm still waiting. I'm just going to put my phone to charge. Carry on asking questions. Yeah, okay, so what you'd use to layer things on the same track is instrument rack. So you just go into your instruments and then you grab instrument rack here. Oh, that's a bit weird. So you just grab instrument rack into an analog channel, into a channel. Sorry, not an analog channel. And then you can drop different instruments into the instrument rack and they'll play together from the same MIDI. You can also got some cool settings, so you can set up zones. You can set up cool things for controllers, keyboards, so they're triggered at different times, and stuff like that. So it's pretty cool, actually. It is pretty cool. Oh my goodness. That's not good news, is it? Okay, so I just crashed Ableton trying to open up an instrument rack. So let's go for that again. Come on, Ableton. Okay, so I'm going to have to force quit that again. The instrument rack just crashed Ableton. I've got no idea why. And now it's not wanting to start up. Let's try again, mate. Give it a little bit of a chance. But yeah, so in the meantime, you'd use an instrument rack, and then you can just put different instruments in that instrument rack, and you can run them off the same MIDI channel. Hopefully Ableton's gonna load. Sometimes you just have to give it a little while once it's crashed to come back. There we go. No, it's not your fault at all, mate. Okay, so there's something weird going on in there. I think I may have discovered a bug. Hopefully it's loading and it hasn't just frozen like that, but this is very, very strange. Yeah, typical, right? I don't know if it's loading or it's just been slow or it's died on me. I don't know. But anyway, let's continue the questions and I'll try and sort that out in the background. 10 minutes left, so hit me up with the questions you need to. Quit Ableton. Let's go force quit. Okay, so something weird has happened here. Can't access file database error. Very, very strange. Never seen it before. I have to look into that after the masterclass. So now I think it's just a case of, let's see what happens. Very, very strange. See if clearing up some space is going to help. I don't think so. There's still loads of space. See if we can get rid of some of this stuff. I'm still here for questions if you want to ask. I'm just trying to sort this out. Complete meltdown. Right, so you get feedback on the assignment on like week 12 or something. So after you finish the course, you'll get the feedback. I'll mark it next week, and you'll start to get feedback. Yeah, you'll get your you get another one-to-one on week 11, so you can get feedback off me then. But you get the final feedback on your last after your last week. So that's week 12. So I seem to have had a complete and utter meltdown of my computer ever since opening up Instrument Rack. Hopefully that won't happen to you. I'm pretty sure it won't. I don't know what happened there, to be honest. Thankfully, OBS and YouTube are still streaming. OBS is still working, so I'm not going to try and mess about with anything else in case we lose the stream. Ah, okay, mate. Well, look, let's just sit it out, and then we can go after. We can just sit it out, I think, is a good way to do it. Okay, guys. So look, Ableton's crashed. No more questions. So look, let's wrap up now, and let's meet up soon. And let's. I'm looking forward to receiving your assignments at the end of this week, and looking at and hearing your music at the beginning of next week. All right, cool, guys. Take it easy, and I'll see you soon. Later.